Light by Barbara Marciniak. Chapter 3, The Game of Life. As we look at the book of Earth and turn its pages, we see many things. Because we exist outside of your time, we see what has slipped between the cracks and what was not put into your history books, which, by the way, barely hold a thread of the great tapestry of your rich and varied history. You may be wondering at this point, what kind of book could we interdimensional travelers be viewing? We call it a book because you believe that you learn from books. One of the questions we would now like to ask is this: how have you arrived at your thinking? Where do your ideas and knowledge come from? And why do you credit some knowledge and discredit others? Open your mind as you listen to our words, for we speak to the library of knowledge inside of you. It is the same library of knowledge that we call the Book of Earth, a rich and varied texture of living history. One of the great issues you face today is how to identify yourself. Will you believe everything that you read in your books and newspapers and view on your videos, movies, and internet? Are these the reference guides for your beliefs? In the Book of Earth, there are ways to understand who you are. You were designed with purpose and move through the heavens on a synchronized journey, one set into motion by beings whose intelligence you cannot begin to grasp. When we have sought to understand ourselves and why we think what we think, even we have encountered forces of existence so gigantic that we pale in comparison. These builders of universes are not vague, nebulous beings. They are composite intelligences, unified in their understanding of the universal energies. They create extensions of their knowledge, bringing their knowledge into physical form, and call you part of that knowledge of Earth. And you use or do not use the power of your mind to structure this knowledge. As you may know, energy precedes matter and form. And here on Earth, your thoughts and perceptions transfer energy into form. So when we speak about calendars of time, they are convenient creations through which you can locate meanings in reality. Your mind likes divisions. Therefore, you name and label and place things in order. Your ancestors, however, had a different way of using their minds. They were far more in tune with the larger cycles of living. You live through a sequence of decades, and every time you shift a decade, it's a big deal. Your ancestors used a different counting of time. Rather than locating themselves precisely in time, they perceived time outside of themselves. They lived precisely in the moment, in the now, for time was rich for them in the now. And there, time opened the pages of Earth, the pages of their ancestors, the pages of living. What they chose to think and believe often came from oral tradition, the exchanging of stories, living close to the land, and through deep telepathic connection and an astute awareness. A need-to-know basis created their abilities. Today you live in a world where you do not want to know, let alone need to know, what what is happening around you. You have abdicated the power of thinking, and you do not even know how thinking arose. Consider that everyone who has ever lived on Earth continues to move forward and affect their genetic lines. Generations of blood and knowledge have been passed down from one human to another. Everything every human has ever experienced is recorded in the great being of your biological structure you call the human body, which again is greater than any computer you could ever design. As we have said, you are not capable, in all truth, of designing a machine greater than yourself. Everything you design is a mere reflection of your own greatness, and it pays to understand that. As our story unfolds, we will look back through the book of your planetary tales to see where other civilizations and forms of intelligence faced the same series of lessons. We will look at the path that they chose and what it taught them. Perhaps in our tales and calling forth of your cellular memory, you will know it all by the end. That is our intent. How you think and communicate is how you know yourself and how you arrive at your beliefs about yourself. Clear communication is the essence of understanding. Your ancestors, whether they lived 10 years or 12,000 years ago, had different modes of communication, and yet the results were similar. Whoever had the loudest voice created the belief system. The history of your world is filled with the voice of the victor, the voice of power, although it was not always a voice of sanity by any means. The so-called victors often knew about the secrets hidden in the mysteries of Earth and her peoples, secrets passed down from antiquity. What kind of secrets could your ancestors have known? We will begin to tell you. However, you must stretch your consciousness as well to reach for this understanding. Secrets were stored in the hidden stories of Earth and in your blood. Actually, everything around you is energy holding the story of what you are, and you keep exchanging that energy with your molecules. Every time you exhale, you are giving off a part of yourself, and when you inhale, you add something more. You live within a visual agreement where, as solid beings, you faithfully replicate the same scenarios again and again. Basically, you do not question whether or not there is another way of thinking and being. You are used to a linear, defined, and expected experience. Therefore, you create it. Your ancestors thought of time as part of a large cycle called the precession of the equinoxes, caused by the wobble of your planet on its axis, which makes the constellations of the zodiac appear to move across the heavens in approximately a 26,000-year cycle. Who lives long enough to count time in this way, you may ask? Well, that is a good question. You may have to expand your thinking to perceive that, at one time, human beings lived on Earth much longer than you currently do. 300 years, or even, at one time, 10,000-year lifespans were not so uncommon. And a long time ago, in the books of important people, there were those who lived for even a few 100,000 years. How could that be, you ask? Or why would they want to? We will come to that. For now, just imagine that it is possible. The cycle of time that is counted again and again in the Book of Earth is this 26,000-year period, which is the amount of time in your terms for 12 or 13 constellations of the zodiac to complete one cycle of movement across the heavens. This grand cycle of time creates one great year and contains the various ages delineated by the signs of the zodiac. Through the marking of time, you can begin to discern patterns, and patterns indicate order and purpose. In a quiet moment, imagine there is a purpose to everything. Everything is designed and planned in an impeccable, synchronistic order. And once you are involved in it, you are not purposeless, little molecules struggling in a meaningless world. You are part of a significant plan, which can be seen from many different angles. The greatest of covert operators may discredit the idea of an immense plan because, no matter how finely they are tuned, they cannot conceive of a greater energy that designs existence itself. Likewise, many people cannot conceive of this immense order because they lack the intent of love or goodwill at the core of their beings. The universe and all you experience are inherently built on love. An unconditional love so grand that it even allows evil its own reign, knowing that even within evil there is a purpose. A purpose exists in all things, though there is never just one purpose, just as there is never only one history, or one calendar, or one way of interpreting anything. There are many ways of seeing and being. We ask you to imagine the Book of Earth and to begin to delineate the ages in your mind. Imagine this 26,000-year cycle divided into 12 or 13 sections, each one almost 2,200 years long, or each one 2,000 years long. The era called the Millennium at the end of the year 2000 was based upon an agreement. Many will argue and say the third millennium date is inaccurate, and this is true. However, that date is based on a long-standing agreement, and agreements create reality. The creation of time is an agreement, and the heavens comply, assisting you to use time to locate yourselves in existence. Now locate yourselves in the moment by noticing your breath, and then imagine that you have lived many times, or imagine your ancestors who lived before you. Earth has been populated throughout the various ages, and each age has a theme, a purpose to achieve. The 12 or 13 ages have seasons just like your 365-day year, and each age can be divided into 4 approximately 500-year slices of time where lessons are to be learned. If you were to reincarnate quickly, you would have a number of lifetimes in each 500-year period. Currently, you are at the end of the Piscean age, age, one of those 12 or 13 slices of time rippling with richness and purpose. You are entering the age of Aquarius, which heralds an awakening and unifying of humanity. The closing doors of the Piscean age bring forth themes of compassion and enlightenment through complete connection with the universal mind. Interesting situations occur during these times, conveying the lessons of your ancestors. Their challenges, victories, and daily living experiences all resonate through time into you. As you expand your view of time, remember that knowledge is passed through the bloodline, whether a blue blood or a red blood. The biology of your being is rich, yet, as with using a computer, you must know how to access what is there. Genetically, so much is within you that beings in the heavens have managed you for eons so that you would not be connected to all that you are. They reap their harvest from your ignorance, through your willingness to give up the power of thinking, to eagerly obey, to be on time, to die, and basically to accept being told what to do. The story we unfold makes sense when you understand why you have come here, how long the lessons have been accruing, and where you are in this season of growth. Movement through the ages shifts the lessons of the current civilization, bringing about the opportunities necessary for gathering experiences essential to their purpose. Each age has its high and low points. There is really no point in condemning one civilization and acknowledging another, because each existed for a distinct purpose. Certainly, reaching the end of one age and the beginning of another is momentous. Therefore, it is essential for you to understand what you face. Imagine that you can hear the tales of your ancestors as if they were alive and gathered around a fire, speaking to you of their journeys and adventures. If you remember this feeling in the quiet moments of daily living, and feel these people rich and alive, you will know you are tapping into your own book of Earth. We use this description to capture an image, for you can use it as well, though in actuality the stories are in the ethers, for the atmosphere itself holds the records of energy. Our intention is to teach you how to read these molecules of intelligence, to discover inside yourself which buttons to push, which programs to access, and the way in which to activate your brilliant biological potential. Now, imagine the 12 or 13 zodiacal ages, each with its own lesson. At the beginning and end of each age, there is always an acceleration of energy that acts as a bridge between the last 200 or so years of the 2000 or so year age, and a few hundred years into the next. Each age has a destiny to experience, a spiritual weather, so to speak. There are ages with new beginnings and ages of great blossomings, as well as ages of harvest. And then there are the ages you call winter, the ages of building spiritual conclusions where one retreats deep inside to access the entire purpose of the experiments in living. As human beings, you enter Earth at birth and interact with living through your family. You are drawn for many reasons to the people of your bloodline. Often you have lived with them before in a direct kin relationship. Other times you follow souls you are deeply connected to and move from one bloodline to another. If you were able to trace your ancestral tree back for thousands of years, you would find that as an individual, you chose to pop in and out of this current bloodline. Today, you are often assessed, especially by those in power, by the quality of the blood that runs in your veins. One of the biggest secrets to understanding how you have arrived at your thinking process involves knowing that heavenly beings exist beyond the slices of time in which you live, and that periodically they visit you. Humans are considered to be a part of certain celestial principalities, a biological experiment available for study. As we said, we refer to your world as Library of Earth, a place where beings are created genetically in the likeness of what you call God, and then set about to live within lessons and seasons of time that are influenced by energy. Where does the influencing of energy come from? Actually, this energy is gathered from your movement through the heavens as well as from your sun. Think about this. What would you do without the sun? Where would you get your food? Where would you get your ideas? Ideas are indeed transmitted on light. The modulation between light and dark and the precision with which they are rendered to your consciousness determine how you perceive reality. This concept is key to understanding how systems of consciousness are designed and how universes and galaxies and solar systems are put into place. Currently, you design games about your reality, then sell them in stores and play them for entertainment. Actually, beings much grander than you or we are, the intelligence behind synchronized, meaningful living, create realities in that same way. With their great blueprint of the game of life, there is always a plan. Today, intelligent waves of light energy designed as seasons of psychic weather hit Earth in an unpredictable way, which is all part of the game of life. The ruling families of Earth have always kept track of their bloodline and have continued to decode their connections to the Celestials who seeded them eons ago. Sometimes they understand their own reincarnational existences. However, part of their mistake has been to remain within their own particular bloodline, which then becomes bloated, electrically discharged, and devoid of light, managing much power, but with no purpose. This power seeks to hoard energy, treasures, and ultimately knowledge of existence. These bloodliners are connected to a vast invisible energy that barely any human can understand. Members of the 12 or 13 families that rule your world have a deep and secret understanding of the division of the 12 or 13 ages of the great year. In actuality, they all know that at one time the ages were divided into 13, and that by changing the way time is interpreted, slices of knowledge and experience have been cut out. How you think is the focus of this lesson. You believe you learned what you know in school, or perhaps you read the newspaper every day. Your mother and father, forms of government, and religious organizations all affect you. But how will you reach beyond the knowledge and information passed to you that define your world? Your ancestors managed this because they used time differently. When we speak of the book that allows us to look through time, our intent is to contort the way in which you view time, so that as you rebuild an image of time in your mind, you will have a new codex for exploring experiences encoded in time in the cells of your being. Now, each zodiacal age had celestial contact, and sometimes the contact was widely acknowledged and understood, considered to be an important part of the belief system of that current civilization. Each age had a way of dealing with the realm of the supernatural. If you trace history in your mind back to the year 0 AD, you will find that your calendar counting punctuates its beginning with the arrival of the being you call Christ. Energy points at the shifting of the ages create tremendous activity, and family of light, who likes to bring in and bridge information, often arrives with their own agendas to teach. Each civilization in its age has the opportunity to exalt or destroy itself. By choosing to be exalted, an ongoing impetus is created, teaching laws of existence that had to be lost. Through destruction, there is nothing left. In the Book of Earth, your world exists for billions of years. The cycle of time we ask you to consider, 26,000 years, is but a small speck. Many a civilization has developed and flourished for a long time, and then has destroyed itself. If you existed forever in one form, who would you be? In your 3D world, it may always appear that you destroy yourselves, one civilization after another. However, in the Book of Earth, any civilization can be visited and located if one knows the coordinates and uses the proper frequency. You are just learning these techniques on Earth at this time. Using technology, the manipulation and bending of time have been secretly practiced for almost the past 100 years, although for thousands of years, even without technology, time jumping has occurred. Those who read the mysteries and understood the hidden secrets always knew how to move through time. Sometimes only visions appeared. At other times, relocation was possible. And sometimes people vanished because they slipped into another aspect of time. You do not need technology or time machines to time travel, although today governments of the world do experiment with this technology behind your back. Much of the chaos happening in the early 21st century Earth is the result of a massive shift caused by time jumpers, moving in and out of your time, looking for particular events or wanting to change probable worlds. Probable worlds are currently known as timelines. Timelines can be changed. The Book of Earth can be changed. One can go backward and forward in time because everything is significant and alive and everything affects everything else. You may wonder how there can be a book of Earth if it is always changing. How can there even be history if the book of Earth, the book of time, can change? Well, how fixed is what you believe to be true? How fixed is World War II, or Babylon, or Buddha's dream? As the constellations pass overhead on what is called the zodiacal belt, you encounter different energies. Whenever an age shifts, one of the unique opportunities is for Earth to transmit rather than receive energy frequencies. Those coming to Earth now are jumping time and entering because they know a vast change will soon occur on how you use energy. Everyone is fighting for control, anxious to see who will win. Will you, as humans, step gracefully into your power, understanding the great lessons the Book of Earth embodies? We come through time to share the lessons we have learned, that reality mirrors itself, that war creates war, that love creates love, that withholding energies for power creates separation, and separation creates illness. You cannot be separated from the whole, so in some way, you must eventually unite. All shifts of ages have to create a bridge of energy, sharing the accumulation of one age with the next. Benchmark points of the ages are punctuated by peak or primary events. Because you are at the end of an age, perhaps you are wondering what the primary event will be. You are in the process of building a wave of revolutionary energy in relationship to your mind and how you think. 2,000 years ago, Family of Light taught an energy of truth and love and brought forth the message, "As you think, so shall it be." The records of Family of Light were later compiled, rearranged, and portrayed the life of a single character, Jesus Christ. You do not have a clear, precise picture in your history books of who lived at that time. People of great power walked the land and taught the truth of the vibration of love. As well, they helped people recognize the tyranny they lived under. Tyranny uses the tool of fear to control you. One of the ongoing tests you face from one age to another, from one season to another, and truly from one moment to the next, is understanding and recognizing fear. When you buy into any version of fear, it can become your experience because your molecules are intelligent and your energy responds to the predominant feeling in your being. The focus of your mind is exactly what gives the orders to create what you experience. Even though your ancestors approached reality from a different point of view, they too had to pass the test of fear, just as you shall in the days ahead. Your ancestors also utilized the physical body in a very different way from you because they utilized both sides of their brain. As you may know, the right side of your brain is connected with the left side of the body, and it is the basis of an unbounded energy of intuition and creativity. The left side of your brain, which is the side most employed during the last 2,000 years, is slowly being developed for logic. 2,000 years ago marked the end of cyclical living. Over the next few hundred years into the beginning of the Piscean Age, there were those who still lived by cycles and talked with the gods and understood the gods as friendly and often kind beings. They had retained their beliefs from the preceding age of Aries, dominated by big empires which strove to capture the gods in form by creating elaborate statuary and building large architectural structures in tribute to these beings. These people were versed in abstract thinking as well as understanding its linear components. They also understood the energy of the Egyptians, embodied in the idea of the Ka, the spirit that speaks to you as a double, the other self, your higher self. When the knowledge of cyclical living began to change, people lost touch with that significant living. They forgot about the spiritual seasons and that life has purpose. The bridge into the 1st century involved living the truth of love. There was a great battle for the truth then, just as there is today. Whose truth would win? The Roman Empire was the ruling order of the day. Its purpose was the unification of two powerful forces, the management and control of spirit and the governing of existence. In order to truly grasp an understanding of your history and your thinking process, you must factor in the invisibles and consider what the goddess and pagan cultures understood. The so-called gods are many and have had many names. The Christian Church, incorporated into the Roman Empire, began its tyranny of your minds by doling out spiritual truths, and those in authority then began to change history by rewriting the books. The gods were renamed, and their activities, devoid of benefits, were given attributes of Satan, fear, and evil. The new thought form, supposedly based on love, was in actuality an energy designed to control you through fear. And once again, you gave your power to think over to a new authority, and fear became more dominant than love. This has happened to each of you over and over again. You forgot to love. The management of minds became dominant in order to rule the souls, the spirits, and energies of the people, and a shift occurred from whole brain thinking, which valued intellect and intuition, to intellectual thinking only. In the last 2,000 years, you have slowly and completely given away your power, first by allowing others to tell you what to think, and secondly, by accepting the dictate that your connection to spirit could only be maintained through an organization, an intermediary, a church. Religious ideas became compromises of spiritual knowledge and were appropriated by the state. Local pagans, keepers of the seasons and the cycles, keepers of the whole knowledge, and keepers of the goddess, were destroyed. 2,000 years ago, when the modern-day mind control began, a great opportunity for love existed. There has always been an invisible frequency battle for the influence of how the experiment of humans will be conducted and conveyed, because there are those who live off the frequencies of fear. What are these frequencies, you may ask? Everything you do in every moment of your life produces a frequency. Now, think about this and feel it. Everything you do in every moment of your life produces a frequency. Why? Because you are an electromagnetic biological being designed to be a frequency generator, and your emotions are the tuning key. You have feelings about everything, whether you want to admit them or not. Even though many of you never express your feelings, they still exist in a cumulative pattern, stored in the cells of your being and in your blood, just as they have in all of the lives of all of your ancestors, of every human being. These patterns radiate out from you in electromagnetic waves that have signals that call to you what you put out. You are connected to something bigger than yourself. From the beginning of time, men and women have spoken with the spirits because the gods were friendly and have always been around. It is only recently that the gods have been managed and kept from your awareness. At the beginning of the Pleiadian age, it was decreed that only certain people could talk to God, that God was not available for everyone, except through offerings of money, and through special prayers, through special priests and popes. Naturally, a dark age then came over the land, an age of sickness, of ignorance, and great fear. The second 500-year period in this 2,000-year test of time was very dark. However, whenever there is dark, there is also light. As the light dawned, many people began to awaken. At the beginning of the Middle Ages, from AD 1000 to approximately AD 1500, new ideas were brought forth. An awakening of human consciousness was occurring once again. However, before this new freedom of thought could take hold, there was a last eruption of darkness, the Inquisition, which was filled with killing and destruction. It was initiated by those who wanted to control the abode of the deity and how it could be reached. They also wanted to limit people's thinking. If you did not think according to what was allowed, you were taken and killed. There were billions and billions and billions of fewer people then, so it was much easier to manage them. Your ancestors lived with fear of knowing secrets and of breaking the rules for what was officially permitted. There were very few who would stand forward and say, "Aha! The emperor is naked. He wears no clothes." Fear was so great in frequency around the earth that, whenever someone did speak out, everyone else moved into fear instead of love. Lessons for living in your time today are similar. When truth-sayers have the courage to say, "The emperor is wearing no clothes," whether you agree with their point of view or not, send them love. They are to be acknowledged for speaking their truth. It is important to speak your truth. not to convince anyone else of it. Everyone must make up their own minds. Please remember, one of the great lessons you are learning, as we see it in the Book of Earth, is to realize you have given over the power of thinking and have forgotten how to think for yourselves. You live now in little boxes and follow little calendars and think the moment that just passed is forever gone, and you erase yourselves as you move faster and faster into a future of purposeless living. Family of Light knows that humankind is immersed in a race toward change, an experiment you must all participate in by changing yourselves. For those of you who are open to ideas and who can hear the message we convey, remember it is not necessary to convert others or preach to them. Simply know in the core of your being that you are all riding the arriving wave of change. Do your best to keep your wits about you. Make your own decisions. Know what you want. Keep yourselves open to the great mysteries, and know that no matter how much you know, it is still only a few lines on a page in the great book of existence. We see that 21st century Earth is a destiny point, and there is a sense of urgency that we and many others feel about this location in time. From your point of view, the point expands across what you would call many years. As we view your world, we see a short period of time, actually encapsulated in about 50 of your years, from 1987 to 2037, that passes like a nanosecond and is hardly detectable in the vastness of all that is. Of course, it is easy to jump to Babylon. It existed for ages. Many other cultures, kingdoms, and civilizations had greater longevity, not here one moment and gone the next. You, however, are living in a time when everything is fragmented, separated, and unconnected, where the winds of time are wispy and the fibers are not so thick. The veil is thin. There were fewer civilizations and thought systems in your ancestors' days, fewer bloodlines, and fewer purposes. The experiment was easily contained and more controlled. Certainly the experiment was always focused on the area called the Middle East, known as the Fertile Crescent, which is filled with ancient structures. The pyramids located in Egypt were used as sound devices to communicate with the heavens. They were also used as weights to balance electromagnetic forces and actually to create an acupuncture point of energy into the Earth grid. The Great Pyramid does not exist above the ground only. Below ground, the structure pierces the Earth so cosmic energy can be transmitted and grounded from one age to another. The Great Pyramid, as you presently know it, has been around for a long time. Records and stories from your modern historians need, of course, to be reconsidered. All of the ancient structures built in stone had a celestial influence, and are far more ancient and have greater purpose than your history books tell you. As you consider the knowledge we share with you, perhaps you find yourselves undertaking tasks that do not always make sense. You may seek to track down your roots by visiting sacred sites, or perhaps Egypt has called many of you back to its corridors. You would actually be called to the corridors of the old Persian Empire, the area of Iran and Iraq. Over the last few decades, great trouble has been brewing there to keep you from entering. It is a key area in the development of human consciousness as part of the Fertile Crescent, where the gods played their games and implemented their experiments and tests. You are still being watched to see how you will create your reality. Will you pass the test? Will you destroy yourselves? Will you create a new world? What will you figure out? Will you look outside the parameters of your finely tuned perceptions, or will you live in a bubble of ignorance, believing everything that is told to you? You are being observed, and you have been studied over time. And because you reincarnate again and again, you propagate yourselves, and eventually some of you trap yourselves in this process. There are beings who observe you, to whom 26,000 years is 1 year on your terms. 1 year. See if you can imagine those who are grander than yourselves, beings who watch you, who meddle with and influence you in order to understand and learn from you. When you think of 26,000 years being 1 year in their experience, what then is this 50-year period we speak of from 1987 to 2037? How can they find it? How do we find it? To you, it may seem as if 50 years is a long time. To them, it is merely the blink of an eye. According to the Book of Earth, as we scan the pages backward and forward to understand you and ourselves, that 50-year period is a significator. It is unique because it has more threads of time and probabilities running into it than any other time anywhere in the Book of Earth. We have asked you to consider how you arrive at your thinking. Certainly by now you may already be questioning what you learned in school, what has been purported as important to know. Your challenge is to re-explore history as you know it, and to look at life from a larger point of view. Use the cells of your being, the sounds of living, and the earth herself to stimulate and guide you. Step outside the abode of the deity that tells you what to think, and step into the abode of your mind. Learn how to think, and then decide what you want to believe. This takes courage. However, you are not alone. The bridge from one age to another is always bustling with tremendous activity. As electromagnetic energies change, the Earth's magnetic field is becoming weaker. Physical and mental structures are not held in place in the same way. When the magnetic field weakens enough, chaos occurs. How you handle chaos is another major test in the game of life. What you do as reality is scrambled will determine your ongoing experience. One of the great reasons why you, as family of light, are here is to experience living from your own created point of view. Your new interpretation of existence, running through every cell of your being, will be transmitted from your auric field and affect the living biosphere of Earth. Ideally, you will transmit a new frequency of love into existence. At the end of an age, an accumulation of knowledge is transmitted. So, what will you transmit? We asked you earlier, what would you count as your victories? Imagine that you make contact with extraterrestrial beings who dwell beyond time. Imagine that they ask you to define yourselves and tell them what you think you know about yourselves. What would you say? What books would you give them to put in the galactic libraries, offered as your contributions? Think about it. Would it be books about the inventions from the last century? Or from 500 years before? What would be the focus of importance? Anything you want to come up with, we would say, limits you in some way. This thought exercise will help you understand where thinking came from and why you think the way you do. Then perhaps you will rethink yourselves. Perhaps with the aid of your ancestors you can understand the ages of time and cycles of influence that vie for your attention and your biological energy, which you emit as emotions. Perhaps you will begin to understand that your energy is being harvested and that others watch you from moment to moment. We said earlier that the gods have taken a nap. We said earlier that the gods have taken a nap. That's only from your point of view. Someone is always connected and around. When you vibrate with fear, you draw energies to you of that vibration. We ask you all to consider, without guilt, shame, or blame, how much fear do you produce in the world? Now imagine that the vibration you send out, without your even thinking about it, attracts a form of life capable of influencing you to keep you producing that same vibration. Without the fear, these energies would have to leave. Beep. Without the fear, these entities would have to leave because they do not resonate with love. In the bigger picture, in the book of Earth, as the pages unfold, we see time and time again, no matter which empire is in charge, Persian, Roman, or Greek, with the great Alexander stepping forward to conquer the world, they are all based on fear and killing. Today, the New World Order has a chance to be another Roman Empire. The Roman Empire merged with Christianity in the early centuries of this era and modulated the truth of family of light to fit their political agenda. Will those of you who are bringers of the dawn today modulate your truth to be one with the New World Order? The ancient Christians were divided. Far from being unified, they were diversified in their teachings. They still are today. Some believed back then that there was more than one God, while others believed there was only one. We say, if there is only one God, that God is love. Love can personify itself in many ways. The grandness and intelligence of unconditional love, which you call Prime Creator, can accept all things. It does not condemn what you call gods or goddesses for being rambunctious or for making and destroying life, because unconditional love itself, the Prime Creator, is constantly created and destroyed. In the bigger picture, everything is imprinted with an ongoing intelligence, and nothing is ever destroyed. As you rethink yourself, think about Earth and the destruction taking place today. The biosphere of your Mother Earth, your physical beings, your backyards, your fields, the meadows, and the forests are in danger. The places where children used to play and run by streams, spending the afternoon laying under trees, studying the clouds as they passed through the sky, are slowly becoming toxic. Once squirrels and birds were valued as precious. Now they are feared as germ-infested creatures. Magic was once alive, but with the selling of linear time and the erasing of the cyclical meaning of existence, magic has vanished. It vanished with the burning of the witches. They were the last brave ones to carry forth the teachings. To bring up the word witches may raise some hackles. There are as many versions of the witch stories as there are versions of truth. Many so-called witches were actually those who defied the ultimate tyranny. Beep. Many so-called witches were actually those who defied the ultimate tyranny of mind called religion. They still spoke to the land like the ancient pagans and understood herbs as medicines. They practiced natural healing remedies and knew how to live in a time of darkness. They dared to reach into the ethers, into the realm of spirits, and communicate with them. They were labeled cavorters with the devil, so they were taken from their homes, their villages, and burned publicly. A great fear spread through the land, for the Inquisition had many methods of torture. However, every age always has its renegades, those who quietly know how to blend in and play the game, who understand that in every moment of living there is a choice. Low road, middle road, or high road. The quality of love or fear you carry into each moment determines which road you travel. Even in the darkest of times, those who understood the frequency of love knew how to shroud themselves. Beep. Even in the darkest of times, those who understood the frequency of love knew how to shroud themselves, and so the mysteries of cyclical living were always carried forth. This was certainly not what the governments or religious organizations wanted. People were told they needed to be governed, that they were not capable of talking to God personally and needed intermediaries. That if they were communicating directly, they must be possessed by the devil. The devil's favorite subjects were women, of course, because women still had vestiges of the intuitive side of the brain from the pagan days. Try as they would to excise cyclical knowledge and implant linear thinking only, women simply could not make that shift for many reasons. They continued to know that their bleeding time was on a cycle that followed the moon as it changed and passed through its phases every 29 days. Their whole way of living and bringing forth life was based on cycles that contradicted the existence of a linear, meaningless world and calendar. This removal of magic and whole living transpired during the third 500-year period of the Piscean Age, as we said, approximately between AD 1000 and AD 1500. As each age unfolds, each quarter section of the age offers lessons. By the beginning of the last quarter of the Piscean Age, fear seemed to be the predominant feeling for the common person. However, in this same quarter, from AD 1500 to the present, the higher echelons of society experienced an enlivening of their spirit. Health and dietary practices changed, and people began to reform their old beliefs. The church and government no longer stood as ultimate authority where heretics were once burned at the stake. An age of enlightenment, an age of reason began. But what would that reason bring? Looking at this last quarter of the Piscean Age, you can see a major acceleration of information distributed among the masses. A great population explosion occurred, and people shifted from a constricted, prescribed view of a flat world to seeing the world as a globe, a world that has another side, a world that held endless possibilities. Whenever new territories opened, whether thousands of years ago or tomorrow in your time, many want to advertise their beliefs there. Remember, your beliefs are based on two simple choices: fear or love. As the New World began to be developed, the Old World Order, the Roman Empire, was already 1,000 years dead and gone. The New World was discovered by European explorers, but it certainly was not new. There were people here who had kept the ancient stories hidden, people who dispersed during the Great Migration after the Tower of Babel and the Flood. They brought with them the knowledge that they held from the time of the gods and translated it into their own words. In time, their books were dispersed all over the globe. In retrospect, it can be seen that it was only the Western world, a product of the Roman Empire and Christianity and its certain mode of thinking, who did not understand that the world is round. They thought it was flat because that is what they were told. Many of the challenges of the ages resurrect themselves today in your day-to-day life. At the beginning of the last quarter point, around 1500 AD, people were challenged with accepting a worldview that instantly changed the agreed mode of living. As much as the church wanted to burn heretics like Galileo and Copernicus who dared to challenge its ideas, they did not burn Columbus because they could not make the roundness of the world go away. Perhaps the church and the ancient authorities could tell the people what to think about the heavens. However, they could no longer promote the belief that people lived in an isolated, meaningless, fear-filled world where if you walk too far, you might fall off the edge into the devil's territory. Once again, a bridge to freedom had the opportunity to build itself. But what was built? During this period, witches were still being burned for speaking to plants and casting spells, for basically using their will and intent to heal and to have reality meet their needs. The witches and the ancients understood many things about the body. Churches and governments wanted no knowledge about the body taught. As a result, people did not bathe and wore many clothes and were terrified, and it is a wonder that they even reproduced. There were always the renegades, as we have said, who did not buy the official story, but who played the game instead. They believed what they wanted to believe, and they survived. Even in the most toxic and volatile of times, people always survive. Plagues moved over the European continent many times in the last 2,000 years, decimating millions and millions of people. At times, over half, maybe 2/3 of the European population was wiped out. Perhaps as you consider our perspective on the Book of Earth, you will notice that you face some of the same dilemmas today. The Fertile Crescent from Sumeria to Egypt, the Mediterranean, and Europe were areas the gods chose for their experiments because many different cultures could be placed in close proximity and easily monitored. Natural boundaries of mountains, deserts, and bodies of water kept the humans separated. An energy grid was opened using the Sphinx and Great Pyramid, as well as many other structures that sprang up in these areas over the eons. In actuality, that entire area is a doorway into your world, a doorway where the ancient ones found a space, which you can think of perhaps in terms of buying a space on the internet, a space in virtual reality. The creation of civilizations around Sumeria and the surrounding areas was like buying a space in a virtual reality of Earth, where an experiment could be seeded, a place where the gods could put up their site and establish the commerce, business, and experience of living. The gods have interesting capabilities. Your ancestors were telepathically linked to them because they were whole-brained, in tune with cyclical living, and able to move energy around their bodies. At the beginning of the Piscean Age, thinking began to crystallize, solidifying the human experience, leading to greater and greater separation. Finally, during the past 500 years, the idea arose that you are mechanized beings. Descartes and Darwin delineated a separate existence, defining life as isolated, compartmentalized, significant of itself perhaps, yet a marvel of meaningless wonder. A mass marketing of meaningless separation took hold, not only separating you from the gods, but from nature itself, achieving the complete control of your minds. A similar story has happened mostly all over the globe. Perhaps those in Africa can track a different timeline. However, their history portrays the giving away of their power to authority, giving up love, choosing war, and then losing everything. In the final isolation, disease runs rampant. South America has had a little different story with the same issues. There, the aristocracy and the common man are vastly separated by a hierarchy with immense resources, but no unification of purpose. Secrecy and misuse of energy rule these areas today, and people are afraid to claim their power. Asia contains one of the greatest experiences of mind control ever. In the vast experiment of China, how do people think? They are told what to think. Families are allowed to have only one child. What can they do? They are over 1 billion people, 1/5 of the planet's population. A potential grassroots movement larger than any other, made compliant. How indeed have human beings been sold such limitation? When we look at the Book of Earth, we see that again and again there have been those who would speak the truth, and often they are not burned at the stake, they are merely laughed at. You begin to understand the energy at the quarter points of the last 2,000 years, yes? The lessons of an age at the quarter sections serve as punctuation points in time. Now that you are removed from those times, perhaps you can understand that you live for a purpose, and that the heavens offers you energetic opportunities to become one with yourselves. Understanding this, and perhaps who you are, the history of your world then begins to make more sense. We again remind you to rethink yourself. Think for yourself, and to use the power of your mind to access the richness of your ancestors and your inheritance. Look around to see what you have created, and know that it means more than you will attribute to it. The bridge to the 21st century has been built by your minds. The question is, whose mind is it? Who owns your mind? Who battles for your mind? How veiled is the control for thinking? Contemplate these ideas as we explore more of the family secrets, the secrets inside the self, the secret miracles the body will perform using the power of the will as we unlock the secrets of blood, sexuality, healing, creation, and living. Living is being, and being is knowing that you are all connected. It is this that you carry over the bridge, the idea that you live in a purposeful, significant, and interconnected